Well, let's start off the conversation with Sajjad Burki. He's the president of the US chapter of Imran Khan's ruling PTI party. Good to have you on the Newsmakers. Thanks for joining us. Were there any surprises in this visit for you?
Thank you so much for inviting me. No, the biggest surprise was the number of people that we got there in the arena the other day. Nobody expected that many Pakistanis to show up and greet their prime minister. There were estimates of maybe we'll get maybe 5,000 to 7,000, but we worked so hard. I think we had a number of over 20,000 people, anywhere from 20 to 25, who came on to cheer the prime minister.
With Prime Minister Imran Khan, when we look at his track record before he became prime minister and in the early days of becoming prime minister, for a long time, he was arguably the most anti-American Pakistani leader you can find. Yet not much criticism of the United States when he sat next to the US president. Tell me what's going on there.
Well, I'd like to differentiate that a little bit. I wouldn't classify him as an anti-American leader. He was more of an anti-American Afghan policy leader in Pakistan. Every time he criticized America was in relation to the Afghan policy that was going on. He was criticizing the American policy of the drones, of killing people over there, of bombing areas in Afghanistan. So I wouldn't classify that as anti-American.
But that policy still continues.
Pro-Pakistan.
Certainly, that policy still continues.
That policy absolutely still continues.
Okay, but as he sits there as prime minister, is the reason he's playing nice with Donald Trump because he needs money and Pakistan desperately needs a financial injection from the United States?
Well, not only that. I think there are many things that they're working on. Of course, we want a resolution with the situation in Afghanistan. That'll help us. We also want a resolution with India on the Kashmir issue so that the prime minister can focus on their economy, on the people in Pakistan. And if we can get peace somehow in that region, we will begin to prosper economically. And you're right, yes, and a certain injection of funds is desirable. It is needed for them because our previous government just totally bankrupted us. We inherited a government that was in extreme debt. And just our debt servicing is so huge that it's an immense burden on the economy.
As the Prime Minister heads back to Islamabad, what has he actually gained from this trip?
I think it's a win-win situation. Firstly, the thaw in the relationship between Pakistan and the U.S., the tensions that we kept hearing about, I think some of those have cleared up, and the people in Pakistan would be glad to hear that that's been taken care of. Second, like you said, there was some definitely talks on helping the economy in Pakistan, trade relations, as you saw. President Trump said our trade could go up 10 to 20 times, a huge boost for Pakistan. And thirdly, if we can somehow start a dialogue with India on the Kashmir conflict, that'll be tremendous.
But do you think that actually came from something substantive, or Donald Trump was just shooting his mouth? Because that seemed to come out of nowhere. The Indians even said they didn't ask Donald Trump to mediate between India and Pakistan.
Obviously, I'm not privy to that, but that's the statement the president made. I know there's been denials from the Indian side. But then again, this is something that Pakistan has been asking for a very long time, that, we need a mediator so that we can begin to talk. We can bring the issue on the table. And, it's just like the situation in Afghanistan. Imran Khan almost 15 years ago started saying that the only resolution to that conflict in Afghanistan is by people sitting on the table and talking, not by bombing them. And now suddenly everybody seems to forget that. He's the first one. He was criticized for it. He was called Taliban Khan. He was, people thought that he was siding with the Taliban leadership over there. But what he really wanted all this time was the war to stop so that a good dialogue could begin, and that's how you bring these conflicts to resolution.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Afghanistan and if there will be an increased Pakistani role in the negotiations and dialogue there. Sajjad Burki, good to have you on the Newsmakers. I thank you very much for joining us. Well, let's broaden out the discussion now. In Washington, D.C., we have Farahnaz Ispahani, who's a former member of Pakistan's parliament and was the advisor to President Asif Ali Zardari. In Islamabad, we have political commentator Moeed Pirzada. And in Washington, D.C. is political analyst Adam Weinstein. He's also a former U.S. Marine who served in Afghanistan. Good to have you all joining us on the program. Farahnaz Ispahani, you know, Trump called Pakistan liars, thieves. He said Pakistan steals the aid money, it helps terrorists. Has this trip, this visit by Prime Minister Imran Khan done anything to convince Trump otherwise and maybe bring Trump more on board to having the relationship as it used to be?
Well, let's look at one thing. Yes, I think the meetings between Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Trump yesterday went swimmingly on the public front. But, you know, President Trump also said he loved Kim Jong-un and, you know, I think he has a great thing going with North Korea. The thing we do need to calm down and focus on is what does the U.S. establishment think? There is a very deep well of antagonism against Pakistan for years of broken promises, for shoring up the Taliban, for its protection of Masood Azhar, who, you know, by the way, was picked up and it was heralded, but it was the 7th time he'd been picked up, and he's been released every time in the past. So, you know, I love cheering and I love the fact that people feel good as Pakistanis, that the Pakistani Prime Minister had a great reception. But, you know, President Trump is a populist leader, much like President Khan, Prime Minister Khan. But, you know, do what they say in public have that much effect on policy? I don't think so. The U.S. establishment is still very, very angry and disturbed by Pakistan's role in housing, feeding, and training terrorist groups that have attacked Afghanistan. Have shored up the Taliban and the Haqqani group, which is one of the U.S. demands. And, you know, also India is extremely unhappy with this. And India in the U.S. South Asia strategy and policy has been considered the biggest ally in the region.
Right. Moeed Pirzada, has Farahnaz Ispahani accurately analyzed the state of play?
Imran, to the extent that she points out that it's a very complex relationship, Imran Khan administration, the Prime Minister Imran Khan's government is not necessarily a government that Washington has looked on very kindly. The Prime Minister Imran Khan and his party, when they were agitating against Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the US media, the US think tanks, the US government were very, very critical of them. So when this party came into power, it was generally thought that Washington is not very, it doesn't look very kindly on this government. So the most important thing that has happened in the last 2 days is that a meeting took place between President Trump and between the Prime Minister Imran Khan, and which actually went smoothly and positively. Within Pakistan, Imran Khan has gained tremendously as a result of the comments, the positive comments which the American president has actually said. Also, the Capital One Arena demonstration with almost 20,000 plus Pakistanis welcoming has also sent a very good message. So while we do not expect immediate tangibles to come out of this meeting, what we see is a positive atmosphere, positive optics. A meeting has taken place. And what Pakistan needs from United States is a broadening of a relationship, a stability of relationship. It would like United States help in terms of getting rid of the Financial Action Task Force FATF listing. It would help. It would expect United States help in smoothing out the tensions with India. Well, India, you heard some of the comments which President made regarding Kashmir have been received very well in Pakistan and very negatively in India. And Pakistan looks forward to help of United States as much as it could with the Afghan Taliban in the Afghanistan imbroglio.
Adam Weinstein, do we have the Trump administration accepting and analyzing the situation that Pakistan is ultimately the key to unlocking peace, or at least some level of an agreement, so that the United States can get the hell out of Afghanistan and, some would say, cut and run? Is that the context with which we should look at this, or the prism with which we should look at Trump being nice to Imran Khan?
Well, I think that's the context that Prime Minister Khan wants to project. I certainly think Pakistan is one of the keys to peace in Afghanistan, and including Iran, including China, including India. You need all regional players. We do see some progress happening. Just a couple of weeks ago in Doha, there were at least informal talks between the government in Kabul and the Taliban, even though they weren't direct talks, because the Taliban has always rejected direct talks with the government. I don't think that President Trump himself has a clear position, and for better or for worse, one of the things you get with President Trump as a world leader is a clean slate. So I wouldn't put too much, I wouldn't emphasize his position on Kashmir, his position on Afghanistan. I wouldn't put too much weight on that. But what President Trump does seem to understand is the value of personal relationships and giving validation to other world leaders, which he certainly did with Prime Minister Khan yesterday.
And Moeed, you heard what President Trump had to say about Afghanistan. Let's have a little re-listen to this for a second.
If I wanted to win that war, Afghanistan would be wiped off the face of the earth. It would be gone. It would be over literally in 10 days.
So the Afghans have asked for clarification, which presumably is an opportunity for the White House to walk this back, right? What should we make of this, Moeed? Trump going, well, I don't want the military option because I could kill everybody if I went for the military option. What does that tell us about what he knows about Afghanistan?
Imran, President Trump has a way of speaking. What he meant in his own peculiar way was this, that the United States has sufficiently powerful, large, humongous military machine that if United States has to really wage a war against the insurgent elements in Afghanistan, it can destroy them many times over in 10 days. But he also meant this is not the way forward, and he wants a peace. Now, as Farah very correctly pointed out, that President Trump is not alone in making decisions. What matters ultimately is how the US deep state, US military establishment, the State Department, the strategic community that is represented by think tanks and media basically look at the situation. So what we believe, and we have reason to believe in Islamabad is, because we have proximity to Afghanistan, we hear all sides, is that President Trump himself would like United States to completely pull out of Afghanistan. It was his election promise as well. But at the same time, his generals, his military establishment, his intelligence community, his strategic community are not really convinced for a full withdrawal. And we have heard statements that perhaps the US strategic community and the military would like to maintain a large reservoir presence in the 5 bases in Afghanistan, and would like the Afghan Taliban to acquiesce to that presence. And there is there are some hints that the Afghan Taliban might actually be willing to accept a prolonged US presence and might be able to open up a dialogue with the Kabul regime. And that is why Ashraf Ghani was here a few days before Imran Khan's visit to Kabul. And this is what Imran Khan has sort of broadly pledged with White House,
right,
that they will help Afghan Taliban to accept some of the conditions the American administration is putting on the table.
Well, yeah, so we have the Afghan government excluded from those talks right now. It's the Americans and the Taliban sitting in Doha. No Afghan government at the table. Maybe we'll find them at the table at some point in time. Farahnaz, one of the claims from Washington over the years, and others, the Afghans have said this, is that Pakistan holds the control to the nozzle of the tap when it comes to the Taliban or the Haqqani network. You mentioned it at the top of the program. So the idea was that Pakistan can at any time decide to support the Haqqani network, to support the Afghan Taliban, to attack American interests, to attack Afghan interests in the country. A couple years ago when I spoke to Khawaja Asif, who was the foreign minister at the time, he said, well, that happened in the past. We don't have that control anymore. And this is something that Imran Khan's also saying. We don't have that control over the Afghan Taliban anymore. Do you believe the Pakistani establishment?
Well, Imran Khan's meetings yesterday were the public meetings. Actually, the important meetings took place with Pakistan's army chief and ISI chief. And in those talks, many things were promised by the Pakistani top military establishment that they would be able to help America to resolve the situation vis-a-vis the Taliban. The United States has a policy, an attempt for the ceasefire and peace in Afghanistan so they can withdraw. But the issue really is it's a failing wish of President Trump's, and as it was rightly pointed out, it was an election promise, and President Trump's already electioneering. So can Pakistan do it? I do think Pakistan absolutely has ties with the Haqqani network. The leadership resides mainly in Pakistan itself. Do they still have the same relationship with the Taliban? Yes, they do. But let's look at it from a different lens. And I think we need to redirect this. The Taliban are outsmarting the Americans how? They are still conducting attacks on hospitals, attacks on children's schools, attacks on old monuments. Every day they're killing in Afghanistan. They are not recognizing the elected Afghan government with all the issues it may have. So they are outweighing. The Taliban is outweighing a US. They know who's desperate to go.
Is that the reason why Pakistan is still keeping its options open just in case the Taliban takes control of the country again?
No, Pakistan is desperate. Look, Imran, we're at a point in Pakistan. The economy is in shambles. They may want to put all the blame on Mr. Nawaz Sharif's government. I would certainly not say that. The economy is in shambles. People are really, the price of items, electricity, everything is out of control. And you can have 20,000 people here in an arena in Washington, D.C. The expat Pakistanis are super patriotic. But in Pakistan, see the kind of public meetings held by the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, by Maryam Nawaz Sharif, by other large political leaders. You see a different scene. The military is here today for two reasons. The economy is hurting, and their grip on Pakistan has been threatened to a point. We have two jailed former prime ministers in prison. We have a former president in prison. The press has been muzzled. The Pakistani military establishment was desperate. And so they presented Mr. Imran Khan as the public optics to come here to say, we'll do anything we can. But can they deliver, Imran? I'm not sure they can anymore.
Yeah, and as we talk, we're looking at pictures of Imran Khan speak at USAID, which has a lot of projects in Afghanistan. Adam, something that's crucial here is that when they're sitting in the corridors of power at the State Department or the DOD or the CIA or the White House, when they talk about Pakistan helping the situation in Afghanistan, are they considering Pakistan as mediators, or are they considering Pakistan as the people who call the shots when it comes to the Taliban?
I'm not sure what they think at the State Department or the CIA, but my personal view is that Pakistan can play a mediator at best. I think in the past, Pakistan has called the shots. Certainly GHQ, the military establishment, and the ISI have had a relationship with the Taliban. We know about the Quetta Shura. But I think at this point, Pakistan could play a spoiler. In other words, if the peace process were to progress and Pakistan didn't like the terms, I think they could spoil the peace process. I think they have that amount of influence over the Taliban. But I don't think that Pakistan is capable of coercing the Taliban into a deal that they don't like. So I think it's a limited relationship that still exists with limited influence. And I think that's the way U.S. policymakers should view it.
Right. Moeed, something that I think everybody agrees on here is that Pakistan needs money, right? The economy is not doing too great. The IMF loan hangs over Pakistan. Can Imran Khan actually thread this needle where he maintains a relationship with the United States that's political and economic or economically revived, while at the same time opening Pakistan up to the Chinese projects and turning east? Can he thread that needle?
That's a very difficult balancing act. Those who have watched his speech in the Washington arena, Capital One arena, would have noticed that he categorically praised the Chinese help. But within Pakistan, there is a realization that perhaps Pakistan was seen too much in the Chinese camp, and many of their expectations have not been fulfilled from the whole financial arrangement with China, with CPEC and everything. So there is a desire to create a balancing act between China and United States. And United States in 2015 and 14, when the CPEC was first being unfolded, the US State Department was on record. They briefed the Pakistani media. They said, we welcome CPEC. We see anything that increases Pakistani wealth creation and structure and liquidity is welcome from Washington's point of view. But then there were several lobbies, including the Indian lobby in Washington, that convinced the US strategic community that China-Pakistan economic corridor relationship is not necessarily in United States' favor. So Pakistan now wants to strike a balance between China and United States. It desperately needs United States. There's a very strong feeling, bipartisan in Islamabad, that Pakistan needs to mend its relationship with the United States, not only for IMF and not only for FATF and not only for Afghanistan, but for the reason that the United States is the sole major global power. It is the leader of the Western civilization. Pakistan has a very diverse community over there. It needs educational, scientific, technological relationship. So the relationship with the United States is very crucial from Islamabad's point of view, and Islamabad will do whatever it can. So whereas it is seen as with a lot of cynicism, but whatever is possible and to deliver, the Imran Khan government would try to deliver on that. And I think they're also saying that, understand the limitations. We don't really have 100% control on the Afghan Taliban, but they will try their level best to seek and court Washington and White House.
Farahnaz, how would you advise Prime Minister Khan to strike that balance?
Well, I think it's quite impossible in a certain way. The United States Asia policy is really hinged on an anti-China focus. And Pakistan owes in loans and in other things for the economic corridor, but also for a lot of other projects, a lot of money. Pakistan is indebted to China. So as all this happiness dissipates, we're going to come down to a point where yesterday, President Trump managed to upset the Indians, upset the Afghans, and upset a huge segment of the United States establishment, which really feels that Pakistan has been epicenter of terrorism for the entire region, in India, in Afghanistan, and also in training people. There have been back-channel meetings where China has told Pakistan off for training certain Chinese separatist groups. So this is far more complicated, Imran. For those of us who spend our time in scholarship but have had experience in Pakistan's hold of power, sat in a lot of these negotiations. I was present in the Pakistani parliament when Osama bin Laden was caught. And all of those things, it's all a web of deceit and lies. Will the Pakistani military establishment give up what they have been doing, the games they have played with the lives of Pakistanis and the lives they have played of all of our neighbors? are they willing to give up that
Right.
power? Is Imran Khan still the boss?
Right.
I don't feel Imran Khan is the boss, which is why asking what Imran Khan can do, to answer your question, is not is moot.
Right.
It's
Right.
a moot
Okay,
point.
that's an interesting point. And one of the controversial things that he said in an interview with Fox News, I believe, was that, well, it was the ISI that gave the Americans the intelligence to get to bin Laden in Abbottabad, which a lot of people turned around and looked at it and went, what? It's been good to get a deep analysis of the situation. Adam, Moeed, and Farahnaz, I thank you all for joining us on the Newsmakers.